Wow. Here we are. Here you are. It is a Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. The Thomas Take Sports Podcast is here. And I will let you guys know that this episode is pre recorded. So, this episode to start the show is not live. So, as you guys submit your comments to this, you will not be hearing from me live like you typically do. I will not be clicking comments and reading those comments. It is a Tuesday night for me. I'm a day ahead, day ahead of you guys. So I'm recording this at this time, November 14th at 8 p.m. to be posted on Wednesday night at 8 p.m., November 15th. The reason I pre-recorded this was due to the events that took place today at One Bills Drive. The Buffalo Bills have fired offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey less than 24 hours after one of the most humiliating, epically pathetic, as the title states, losses that I've ever seen watching football. Not just Bills football, which, you could rank a lot of losses in that time frame over the last 31 years that I've lived on this earth that have been epically embarrassing and epically pathetic. This one ranks quite high. Before I dive into that, this show is sponsored by 26shirts.com. The fan of the year, Del Reed, shout out to him on the front cover, as he should be, opening the show. So 26shirts.com, go to their site, check out all their t-shirts, as any shirt purchase goes to a great cause as they've continued to give back to the Western New York community. So this show is very important, as was last week's, because in case you don't know, you should know. My name is Ryan Thomas. Not only is this the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, but we are living in an epically bad time. We are in a turn for the worst in this regime as Buffalo Bills fans, and we're at 5-5. The clock is ticking against us. Time is not in our favor with our record that we have at 5-5. Heading into another matchup next week at home against an AFC East opponent that has beaten us once before in the New York Jets. I'm going to talk about that as we go later into the show, as we dive into more of the show. That's something that I'm definitely going to dive into a little bit more. Now, as we go through this process, there is so much to unpack with last night's game, and I want to talk about that. Monday Night Football, Buffalo Bills lose in epically pathetic fashion. It's the only way that I can word what I witnessed last night between the Bills and the Broncos. 24-22, losing that game was something that could not happen, should not happen, didn't have to happen, but did. And to let you guys know, first and foremost, this game was a battle between two teams that were begging to lose, two teams that did not want to win this game. Denver forced 4 turnovers, 5 turnovers, 3 fumbles, two fumbles, 3 interceptions. And they were trying to give this game away. They couldn't kick an extra point. They couldn't get a field goal starting possession on the 40. The Bills defense did everything that they could possibly do in this one, and then some, to help the Bills achieve victory. And yet it still was not good enough, because this offense was horrible in this game. This offense was one of the worst versions of the Bills offense that I've seen since Josh Allen's rookie year. And Josh Allen in his own right was terrible. And something had to change coming off of this game. Something had to give. Something needed to change. Now, I've been on Twitter X, whatever you guys want to call it now. And I've been talking about these Bills ever since this game ended. And I have a lot of opinions on where this team stands right now and why they stand where they do. But let me put it to you simple and plain. Ken Dorsey, in a nutshell, has everything to do with why the Bills are where they are record-wise. But if I were to pick any game that had as little to do with Ken Dorsey in a loss as any, it was last night. Ken Dorsey didn't throw those interceptions. Ken Dorsey didn't fumble the football on the first play of the game from scrimmage by James Cook. Ken Dorsey didn't leave 12 men on the field in what was another retry for Will Lutz to drill it through the uprights and help the Bills, or help the Broncos, rather, win this game. Ken Dorsey didn't do that. Players did. Sean McDermott, situational play calling his defense for an all-out blitz 2 plays in a row. Teron Johnson commits defensive pass interference that allows the Broncos to get another shot at a new lease on life. I can't give Denver any credit for this win because Denver literally did everything that they humanly possibly could do to lose this game, as did the Bills. This was a game between two really bad teams. And right now, the Bills are a bad team. The Bills are a mess. We know that. I think Bills fans are starting to come to that realization. And after this one was over, even though, as I just stated, that this loss was not solely on Ken Dorsey, the offense was anemic again. The offense has been a problem to this team, while the defense has performed beyond my wildest expectations, despite the injuries that this defense has. Trey White out for the year. Matt Milano out for the year, at least indefinitely. DeQuan Jones. No timetable on any of them returning. Right. And we've seen other guys go in games. Micah Hyde wasn't in this one last night. Christian Benford didn't play last night as well. So we're seeing other players out of the action, out of the game from last night, and heading into last night rather. And the defense is still playing well. They're still playing on their head. You know, they're standing on their head, as I like to put that in hockey terms, trying to do whatever they can to help this team get to where they need to be in winning last night's game. As important a game as any, the most important game is the next one, but the Bills, with their back against the wall at 5-4, had to win this game. They had to win this game, and they did not. They came away with a loss that the final moments of this game will live in infamy for all the wrong reasons, as far as horrible situational coaching. And that's that in that portion of this show. So let's talk about what took place today at One Bills Drive, today being Tuesday, as this show is recorded for Wednesday. The Buffalo Bills decided to fire their offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, in an era that lasted so little time, less than 2 years. And I want to say, first and foremost, that going back is important to talking about the present. It's really important to kind of go through what led us to this moment, because when Brian Daboll decided that he was going to take one of the 32 coaching jobs, or 30 rather, coaching jobs, because the Bills head coaching job wasn't available to him, when he was going to take a head coaching job, right? It was his time to be elevated into that spot. It was pre-known and predetermined that interviews were happening while the Bills were in the playoffs. He's interviewing with the Dolphins. He's interviewing with the Giants. He's interviewing with other teams 1 year, and then a year later, he's a head coach with the New York Football Giants. I don't question why Daboll would want to take that opportunity first and foremost. There's only so many positions that are head coaching positions in the NFL. He's getting his first shot, his first real shot at running a team, essentially. You got Joe Shane there, Brandon being understudy. It was a perfect transition as he elevated from being a quarterbacks coach to an OC, NFL collegiately as well, to head coach in the National Football League. And when Brian Daboll went from the Buffalo Bills to the New York Football Giants, he wanted to bring Ken Dorsey with him as his offensive coordinator. Now, the structure of that would have been a lot different than the way that it is, or way that it has been, rather, with Dorsey here. The structure of that would have been Daboll being the head coach with an offensive pedigree that led him to that position, calling the offensive plays. Ken Dorsey would have the official title as an offensive coordinator, but largely Daboll would be calling the plays. And Ken Dorsey would more so work as an offensive coordinator / positional coach quarterbacks more likely than not, for obvious reasons, being a former quarterback himself, and he was pretty damn good one in his own right in college. So that's how that would have worked. But Josh Allen said to Sean McDermott, please ensure that this guy doesn't go. I need him to stay around. I want him to stay around, and we need him around. I don't want to lose both Daboll and Dorsey. So Sean McDermott did what I think he regrets at this current time and listened to his quarterback and said, I'm going to get Ken Dorsey here, promote him from within, give him a chance, give him a shot. Just like Brian Daboll just got his shot as a HC head coach. Dorsey is going to get his shot, first and foremost, as an OC for the first time in his coaching career. It's a very big deal, right? To be able to man that side of the football that you were a quarterback within. And it had results that were positive. I do want to state that. It had results that were positive. It wasn't all bad. If it was all bad, this era with Dorsey as the offensive coordinator would have been over a long time ago, but they went 13-3 last year. And when we go back to that Cincinnati loss in the divisional round, that's really when it all started to come crashing down emphatically, because their season was over. But even prior to that, the wild card game against Miami, weeks against New England, their offense started to completely deteriorate. And it did so in a way to where a lot of teams say this as a buzzword, but it's a true word in every sense: identity. What was the identity of the offense under Ken Dorsey? Were they a passing offense? Were they a rushing offense? Were they trying to become more of a balanced offense? And I think the latter, what I just mentioned, trying to become a more balanced offense, was where they resided. They thought, hey, if we're able to run the football a little bit more, get better in the run game with an addition like James Cook, let's try to see what this does for our offense. Oh, wait, okay, we don't necessarily have a wide receiver too. Let's try to go into this draft with a Jordan Addison in it, a Quentin Johnston in it, a Jackson Smith and Jigba in it, and there's another one I'm forgetting. I'll think of it in a minute, but 4 really good wide receivers were in one draft last year, and yet the Bills were on the outside looking in at that 27th pick, 28th pick, somewhere in that range, to get one of those guys. As those guys went 4 picks in a row, 20-24, the Bills moved up and took the best tight end in the draft, which let Ken Dorsey say to himself, okay, they're trusting me to have us draft an offensive playmaker, sure-handed as any in terms of pass catchers in the NFL draft last year, Dalton Kincaid, to where now I can put my own wrinkle to this offense and I can have 2 tight ends rather than just one in Dawson Knox, who Knox showed some ability and some deficiencies. We can get more athletic. We can get a little bit more improvisational in the 2 tight end set, 12 personnel, that few teams have been able to master because they haven't had that opportunity to even attempt it. Few teams have had 2 great tight ends in one offense. The last time we saw it goes back to the early 2010s with a guy by the name of Rob Gronkowski and another guy by the name of Aaron Hernandez. That was lightning in a bottle. It was so short and so sweet for obvious reasons. Gronk went one way and he went upward in terms of his career, and Aaron Hernandez's life went extremely downward. So that's what allowed that to not really be seen for as long as it should have been, because that was great. But what you're forgetting in this whole thing is, well, they had longtime coaches, longtime offensive coordinators, whether it was Bill O'Brien or Josh McDaniels, as they've both kind of played musical chairs with one another, taking that position. And you also had the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady. So it was a veteran, not a 6-year player, 10 plus years in the league, 11, 12 years in the league at that point, and had played with Randy Moss and Deion Branch and a who's who in that organization, within that offense, that same style of offense. They'd always had 2 tight ends. They just never had 2 tight ends as great as Gronkowski and Knox. So the Bills were playing catch up here with this offense. And I talked about this last week. I said it last week. I'll say it again. I loved the concept. I loved the idea of being a 12 personnel offense because I went to the training camp. I saw it firsthand. They were implementing it. It was working. They were featuring Kincaid. They were featuring Knox. And it appeared like, okay, they're going to try to make up for this deficiency here at the wide receiver 2 spot by kind of being more of a physical offense rather than a finesse offense. Big-time quarterback, big-time tight ends, freak of a wide receiver in Stephon Diggs, and a better version in the running game with James Cook. You'd think, okay, that should work. But to any of the people that I have talked to that are offensive savants, I am more of a analytical guy in terms of just what I see in team building. Play calling, yeah, I could probably draw up some plays for sure. I definitely think I can. I know I can, as a matter of fact. But that overhead Madden view that we all know and love when we're playing Madden, you do that on the All-22 over the last few weeks. And the All-22 is the NFL Plus version of like the inside the NFL stuff, where you can really dive into some advanced stats as to down and distance, play calling, plays themselves. And you go into that and you'd see that the Buffalo Bills have essentially this season have ran a variation of probably 8 to 12 different offensive plays, run and or pass, which is JV level or almost Pop Warner level play calling to an offense that is a National Football League offense. So Ken Dorsey clearly had a vision. He just did not have the capacity within that vision to achieve it. I look at it as somebody that's unfit for the job. You could get political here and make a political joke here about that. I'm not going to do that, but worthy conversation in comparison. Someone that's unfit for the position, unfit to run the day-to-day operations of something. I'm sure in your workplace history, your working history, you would see somebody get a promotion and think, oh my God, they cannot do this. This is not something that they can do. And that in time is something that you learn with certain individuals. And those certain individuals cannot meet the requirement of what is demanded and expected from the employer, from the position. It's no different than anything in the workplace. Ken Dorsey was promoted. He was hired, promoted from within, and was expected to meet a task that he was incapable of meeting because the experience that he had was not good enough to demand the results that are demanded of him, to achieve, rather, the results that are demanded of him. It's a very important fact of this whole situation that has been the Ken Dorsey era as the offensive coordinator. Now, I liked the idea of Josh Allen. Okay, I don't want to lose my offensive coordinator and the guy that's brought me along as a quarterbacks coach. I don't want to lose those guys. I don't want to lose both. If I'm going to lose one, I understand it. It's Brian Dable's time. He's moving on, but I don't want to lose Ken as well. So they move on. They go through that, and it was the wrong decision. And this decision falls on two people. It falls on Sean McDermott, and it falls on Josh Allen. It falls on McDermott for making it when it was an easy decision to make. It wasn't the right decision to make. It falls on Josh Allen as well for not playing up to the level that he needed to while in that system, while endorsing Ken Dorsey. As time wore on, it looked like Josh Allen was a shell of himself. As of right now, physically, the face, the body language, the attitude, the leadership or lack thereof is not the Josh Allen that you know, that I know, that this fan base came to embrace. He looks lost. He looks downtrodden. He looks like a quarterback that, truthfully, just doesn't have an answer. And I talked about this with a guy that I really do respect, Ed Kilgore. He was a longtime sports director at WGRZ. And respectfully, I disagree with him on this concept that press conferences don't necessarily matter. They're not for the fans, that the players don't have to explain themselves to the fans. I disagree with that 100%. If that were the case, what's the point of having these press conferences? Who would watch them? What's the point of the media asking the questions that they do ask if the response is something that just doesn't matter? Because on my side of the fence, I'm watching this game last night, and I want to know what they're going to say. I'm on the edge of my seat despite watching the catastrophe that was a crucial and simple error of counting, essentially. How many players are coming off the field and how many players are going on the field? Something that is such a JV Pop Warner level penalty that cost the Bills a National Football League game on Monday Night Football. I want to know why that happened. I want to know how are they going to prevent that from happening again. And I want to see accountability so that I can go to bed at night feeling like what I had just witnessed is going to be learned from. That matters to me. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself here. Maybe it doesn't matter to everybody else, but to me, that matters. And I watched that press conference last night, and I saw Josh Allen that I had never seen before. And that concerns me for the future of this team. That concerns me for his future as well, to have a press conference where you're the quarterback, the QB1, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You're a superstar. You're on the cover of Madden, blah, blah, blah. And you go in with your center, Mitch Morse. You go in with your centerman and guy snapping you the ball, and you're not really giving us anything. And a lot of these questions are really hard to answer for any player, but they're the reality of the situation. Enlighten us. Tell us what is going to be fixed and how it's going to be fixed, rather than saying, I know we can fix it because we've done it before. It's a very vague, very short, very calculated answer to where he didn't want to throw anybody under the bus. And the time for me doesn't matter in that regard, whether he's throwing anyone under the bus or not. The time in that moment was, why did I make this throw? I made this throw. I made mistakes. I need to clean up my game. I need to go back to the drawing board. Those answers, those statements, had those statements been made, I would have been able to leave that press conference feeling better despite the loss. But because of the way they responded, I did not and do not. And Ken Dorsey and promoting Joe Brady as the interim OC doesn't necessarily solve the problem yet. The only thing that will solve the problem is in time, seeing this offense be better next week, the week after, but I wanted them to move on. I knew they needed to move on. I knew the players needed to move on. I knew Ken Dorsey as well needed to move on. It was not working. But I knew that 3 weeks ago. Granted, they made the move. I'm happy they made it, but 3 weeks too late. We're 5-5 now. The AFC, we got a laundry list of teams to look up at, and we got to essentially win out in order to make the playoffs. We do. 10 wins, I don't know if that gets you into the playoffs this year. I don't. There's a lot of good teams that are in that 10-win territory, projected to be. I don't know if it does. But I also know that, again, Joe Brady, former offensive coordinator in his own right, doing something that Ken Dorsey had never done before, is the next logical person to take this role. And I think that matters. And I think that it's a ringing endorsement from a lot of the people on the team that wanted to see him get this spot in the first place, namely Stephon Diggs. And you go back and you say, all these people were saying Diggs was a diva. They're saying that he was a premature naysayer and things like that. He was right. He was right the entire time. So I look at this as a step in the right direction. It's 2 steps back, 1 step, to the side. And I think that this is going to be a move that, most of us are going to be looking at and saying to ourselves, 3 weeks too late, but better late than never, I guess. 3 weeks too late, but better late than never. And I'm looking forward to seeing what transpires this Sunday, despite the fact that we're at a point where we're 5-5. And truthfully, I don't really want to watch these games after watching what I just witnessed last week. But I'm going to, because I love the game and I want to see the Bills salvage this, see if they can. I am in that headspace. But make no mistake about it, Ken Dorsey was a player that wanted to become a coach. He became one. He was a positional coach, got an opportunity, and he was unfit for it. It's just business. That's all it is. And anyone that wants to turn this on its head and say, oh, man, if they still had Dable, if they still had this, you're just wasting your time, because Dable was ready to move on, and he did. And I don't know if he'll ever come back. That's a question that a lot of people are debating right now, but I don't want to live in fantasy land. I just want to live in the reality of it, that Brian Dable's the head coach of the New York Football Giants. There's no signs of that changing. I don't think Dable was as great as a lot of people said he was. And I think, sorry about that, I think that he wanted to be a head coach and earned that right at that time to leave when he did to be that. But now, looking at the Giants, are they doing much better than the Buffalo Bills? They're not. So a lot of things and reason for that. The bad team, bad pieces, whatever you want to say. But at the same time, putting this out there, this shows more to me than ever about where this team stands in the quote-unquote McDermott era. And I'm saying McDermott, but really in the McBean era. Sean McDermott predates Brandon Beane, by the way. That's something that I think a lot of people get lost on, that the fact that Sean McDermott was here prior to Brandon Beane. So this was something that I've been thinking about it since last night's game ended. So over the last 24 hours, I guess you could say, I've been thinking about it so much that I barely slept last night. And I'm being honest when I say this. I truly don't know if Sean McDermott is the right man for this team. I truly don't. And I think we're starting to understand that at a higher level due to two things. Sean McDermott, in situational play calling moments, whether it's calling a timeout, clock management, down and distance situations, he's one of the worst head coaches in the NFL. It's continued to persist throughout the last 3 years, especially. You go back to the 13 seconds, you go back to the no-show at Cincinnati, you go back to week 1 against the New York Football Jets, you go back to the New England Patriots loss, you go back a year ago and they played the Minnesota Vikings at home. When this team loses, it is epically bad. It is not your average, man, we really hung with them and we just came up just short. It's, no, we're going to give you this game in the most comically bad way possible. We're going to give you this game. And that's something that I really can't stand. I can't take that anymore as a fan. I can't accept that because this team is better than that. This team has too much talent in terms of Allen as an all-pro, potentially Hall of Fame caliber quarterback, Stephon Diggs, potentially Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver, the best duo in the league since they came together. And it's just being squandered by horrible offensive coaching decisions, which do fall under McDermott. This is now the fourth offense. Joe Brady is now the fourth offensive coordinator since 2016 to take the role from McDermott, under McDermott's watch. Rick Dennison, Brian Dable, Ken Dorsey, and now Joe Brady. And Dennison was there in 2016, 29th in offense. He was fired. Dable became a head coach with the Giants. Ken Dorsey fired today. Joe Brady, the interim OC. And who's to say that Joe Brady is going to be the OC next year? That depends on the next X amount of weeks, right? 7 weeks left? So I think that is a tall tale sign that you have a coach that is a defensive mind, right? That has done, and I will give this to him all day long. He has done great things with these defenses since he got here. Brought in Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. Jordan Poyer was essentially a nobody prior to coming to Buffalo. Micah Hyde was not the all-pro safety that he became here. Drafts Trey White, brings in Matt Milano in a mid-round pick, as somebody that he identified as an outside linebacker fit for his defense. And, Ed Oliver, they've done a really good job on defense. Epinesa was a worthy investment. Rousseau was a worthy investment. Von Miller, though, was not. And that comes down to Bean and McDermott a little bit too. But just talking about McDermott's ability to coach this defense, he's been phenomenal. And this season in general might be the most impressive job he's ever done when coaching a defense. But on the other hand, it's been the worst job that he's ever done in terms of situational football, which is why they're 5-5, among many other reasons within their offense, right? So it's a combination of Dorsey's bad game planning, play calling, as well as Sean McDermott's inability as a head coach to really manage a game as head coaches can do efficiently from time to time in the league, right? So I think that this season is one that these next 7 weeks are going to tell us a hell of a lot. It's going to tell us, number one, is Joe Brady ready to be the OC? That's a question. That's like the first question. Number two, though, if he's not, and he doesn't do what he needs to do, and the Bills go 2-5 in the next 7 weeks and miss the playoffs, and they're under 500, is this the end of the Sean McDermott era? And I gotta tell you, I think it has to be. I think that the window has closed on this team largely due to going back and racking your brain on these decisions that Sean McDermott has been incapable of showing that he can make. And I think he's a great defensive mind. I just don't know if he is the guy to be the guy to take them to the big game. And it's been a long time, guys. 2016, he took this job, and it's been a roller coaster ride ever since. And it feels like 20 years ago with the amount of gaffes that McDermott has had in the biggest of moments. It's time. But the snowball effect has only continued to get bigger and bigger and bigger. The more time they give him, I fear, the worse that this is going to get. And that's a fear of mine. It's not a fact. It's not an opinion necessarily, but it's a fear of mine. And I want to really hammer this home, guys. I'm not just coming on here to bash Sean McDermott and say that he needs to be fired and fire the coaching staff, fire this, fire that. It's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that, one, situational, it's bad. Nobody can disagree with me on that. But it's not just bad. It's so bad time and time again that it makes these players wonder, what the hell are they doing? And it makes me really wonder when I see the reactions of Allen and Morse and a few other guys. Is he losing this team? Is he losing the locker room? And that's a worthy thought. If that thought has not crossed the mind of every single Bills fan, I think you're living in denial that this is the guy that, hey, he got us through the playoff drought and he helped us break that. He's done a lot for us. He's the winningest coach in regards to winning percentage, even higher than Marv Levy. Doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the fact that this franchise has never won a Super Bowl, and they have the best talent in the game at the position, and they also have one of the best pass catchers at the wide receiver position that the game has today. And it has amounted to a championship game appearance and a couple divisional round appearances and eliminations, and now missing the playoffs potentially. I understand these injuries have been terrible. I knew that Matt Milano was a massive blow. I knew Trey White was a massive blow, but doesn't change the situational gaffes that McDermott has had time and time again. And to be honest with you, Sean McDermott is one of my most respected coaches that I've ever, had the privilege of not only just like covering on the show, but just in general. I respect the man. I really do. But he's just not it. He's just not the guy. And I question that greatly each and every week. I feel like his time has come. And when I see the reactions of the players and how things have been going, it's just a tired process that I do not trust. And I think that that's worth throwing out there. Now, the next 7 weeks could change that. They go on a roll and they run the table, and who knows, right? Anything is possible, but judging last night, do you guys expect that to happen? I know I don't. So this is something that I'm keeping my eye on. I think the McDermott era, the door is closing on it, potentially a lot faster than what any of us thought. And, this goes up to the top. This goes up to the Pagulas, and Terry Pagula in particular. Do I think Terry will fire him? I don't know. I know people don't think that Terry will fire him, but I think if Terry gets the sense that the players are not responding to him anymore, there might be a situation where he gets let go on Black Monday if they miss the playoffs. They're willing to pay the money that they need to pay him to, get him gone. And it's like the nails in the coffin. He's fired Ken Dorsey. The walls are closing in on him. He needs to show that they're going to rebound from this. And if he doesn't, then might be him that's gone, regardless of firing Dorsey or not. So, revitalizing Josh Allen and this offense, Joe Brady, what is he going to have to do to revitalize Josh Allen? I think a lot of it is just going back to what worked before, letting Allen play his game, letting him move his feet, letting him throw on the run, letting him call his plays a little bit here and there, letting him kind of take what he likes out of the playbook that was left behind and running those plays and incorporating those types of plays. But how much will this offense change at this point in the season? I don't think a whole lot, which makes me question how this team is going to be better, any better. That's my take on everything that we just discussed. Ken Dorsey, gone. The Bills, 5-5, potentially missing the playoffs. This season has been a massive disappointment. The Bills fans deserve better. And unfortunately, they might have to wait another year to be better. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast.